We have with us Professor Bimol Akoijam, MP from Inner Manipur, to talk to us about the ongoing crisis in the small northeastern state. Manipur has been in the boil since last May when clashes broke out between two ethnic communities, the Meiteis and the Kukis. Over a year down the line, situation in the state continues to be volatile. On Monday, CRPF personnel killed 10 armed Kuki militants in retaliatory firing after they allegedly attacked security forces in Jiribam. Welcome to the print, Professor Akoijam. Uh, your first thoughts over a year after the conflict broke out in Manipur. In fact, we had you in our studio last May, just a fortnight after the violence had erupted.
In fact, that's the first interview I gave to a national media.
Yeah, you are not an MP then. So, have things changed on the ground? How do you see situation on the ground today?
I think there has been a change, but it is not for the better, but for the worse. Things have become bad in the sense that the conflict has deepened more. When I talked to you in the May, the conflict was not that deep. It has gone now to the societal level, and it has percolated to various spheres, cultural, social, economic, and all of that. That's the change from the time I talked to you at the beginning. This is really bad now. And two, that failure of the state, which I thought then was sort of an aberration that time, but it has become the norm now.
But who do you think is responsible for this, Professor?
No, I think that essentially it is absolutely the government of India. I have no doubt about it. And that time also, I have hinted that the state government is just a rubber stamp. It doesn't have its agency, and this is not a compliment for the state government. In fact, under the constitutions, it has its own autonomy. It goes without saying that, but the people who runs the state government doesn't have its own will, the capacity to assert that constitutional right. They've been following whatever the Delhi government says, government in Delhi says. So I think it is a complete failure of the government of India as well as the state government. They are two sides of the same coin. They are not two different entities, and complete erosion of the federal structure. If the Delhi says you stand up, they will stand up. If Delhi says that you sit down, they will sit down. If Delhi says keep quiet, they will keep quiet. I know so much so that even the chief ministers once said it became a controversy in the state. He says, "I will take care of the Central Valley area, and the union government will take care of the hill areas." Kind of, it's just absolutely unacceptable statement because it is, after all, a state government. Entire territory of Manipur is under the jurisdiction of the state government. If the union government wants to take over, they should declare emergency or president's rule. They should impose it. This is a surreptitious way of subverting the federal structures. What to do? You have sort of a yes man, the local staff, satraf, which is running the show there, and conveniently the union government is hiding behind the fact that there is a state government. So I hold the state government and the government of India solely responsible for this. Even if there are, you know, forces which involve international dimensions, both in sense of drugs and ethno-nationalist mobilization. But I'll ultimately it rests with the government to deal with it. So I think they have completely um, abandoned, or otherwise they are doing a very, very intriguing, dirty game, strategic and political calculation behind this crisis.
So, what is the way out of the conflict, sir? As in, I mean, what will it take to restore normalcy, bring back normalcy in Manipur? I mean, no state can function like this. I mean, there is complete segregation between the two communities, right from, the administrative, police, every level. So, I mean,
Mostly let's look at it. before you look at it, that's what I was saying, the complete responsibility of the government of India. You know, in Manipuri, we have a saying, Sambal na Hawai Maton Chaba, you have this picket fencing and to guard the flowers and plants. But if that fence itself is started destroying, Chingari Koi Bharke, there is a lovely song by Kishore Kumar, no? If the boatman sunk the boat, who is going to save the boat, kind of a situation. So I think the government of India and the state government, their complicity in this whole problem, it creates that kind of a situation when you ask about what is the way forward. I think that's important. Far more than the segregation that you are talking about, I think it is the state's failure. The Indian state has terribly failed. If you have allowed this kind of a segregation, you have allowed the conflict to be deepened so much, you have even abandoned your legitimate right to the claim of monopoly of the legitimate use of physical force. And as a state, you are supposed to assert your authority. Everybody is armed, and you are just a mute spectator in that. The erosion of the state, this kind of a statelessness has been imposed by the state itself.
So is it
So therefore, your question, how to go about the segregation, all these will be easier to handle. These are in fact now secondary issues. Primary issue is the how is that Indian Democratic Republic, a legitimate state, a member of the UN, allows itself to be a banana republic in Manipur, how it allows its legitimate authority to be eroded, institutions to be eroded. If you have eroded these structures and the state is delegitimized, there is no point in talking about way forward. So the way forward is to realize by people in this country that the constitutional order has to be established in Manipur, and the government of India and the state government should be held accountable for bringing such a state of affairs. So I think the way forward must start with that.
what do you think is behind the situation in Manipur? What led to the situation to come to such a pass? Is this the perceived discrimination that Kuki groups have been saying that they have been facing over the years, where they say that much of the funds for the state was spent in the valley, hardly anything went to the hill area. So, is it the perceived discrimination? What is it that led?
I think what has led to this problem is I'm saying it again. This is the Indian state. I think number one, we should not. We have diverted. It is a very convenient way to divert to fix responsibility. The Indian state's failure is one. That as far as this claim about discriminations and this violence is a result of that is a convenient narrative. This is a couple of things you have to keep in mind. There has been a long-standing grievances among certain sections of the population in the state about differential development and so on and so forth. But I have, for instance, before I joined electoral politics, I have suggested to governments after government that you should launch an objective investigation, something like on the line of a this one, uh, Chachar committee sort of thing you should form and investigate. Because whatever the preliminary study we do it, the power sharing, economic sharing, this budgetary allocation, these are not factually assessed. It's a convenient way of using certain numbers and arguing it. The participations of the various segments of society, including the scheduled tribes, in the state administrative structures, if you compare with any other states in the country, will be much more higher. And if you look at the per capita income or the literacy rate or mortality rate, if you measure by any standard, Manipur's situation will be far better than any of the states in this country. So I think uh, this kind of issue that has been flagged up is not only this group, this is so-called cookie zoo as they are using it now, but other community also have similar grievances, but they don't lead to this kind of armed arsons and killing of people. You don't get to see that. And take, for example, the third, this rally was happening everywhere in many of these scheduled tribe areas. But
Last May.
only in Churachampur you have these problems. Why? And then people are talking about looted arms, and evidence will show that the violence in the afternoon of 3rd began in that area, Churachampur, Torbung area, and that is where you saw for the first time is not the ordinary mob who are burning down houses, but there were AK-47 wielding men with masked men among those. And later on, many of the social media have started playing it as if those armed men were Meiteis and attacking the peaceful rally, which is absolute lie. I have the video recording of that disinformation campaign. So I mean, this violence is not merely about, in fact, it is, I would say it has nothing to do with that. This kind of a grievances, which is a long-standing one among many sections of the population, that has been used as a convenient ploy by certain vested interests to create these problems. And I think look at if I may take you, look at this fact, the police commandos being withdrawn before this 3rd May rally from Churachandpur areas, and people who have vandalized the gym there, those were detained by police, and one MLA from their Churachandpur area comes and released them. And also, you have already been building up this violence from the towards the end of April. In this is systematic assessment. So I think it is a diversion if you talk about this discrimination and differential. These things must be addressed, whether it is perceived or real, must be objectively assessed and administered. But no violence can be a justification for any political demand or a registration of any of such grievances. You cannot deploy burning down houses and armed men and so on and so forth. And there has been unfortunately mostly there has been a disinformation campaign. I'm just saying it. Please go back. Where do you see the first time a sophisticated armed men at the start of this crisis? It was in Torbung areas, and those armed men were from the so-called Kuki-Zo community. It is on record, it's on video in the afternoon of that one. Then later on, you will see a lot of civilians started taking. That's why I said the state. Why is that? I have been saying, if you remember from your interview, you can use it if you want. I said from the day one, the state authority must assert and this violence must be reined in by the state. I have been saying this.
It's
But
basically a failure of the
that,
state
I
than
think
anything
far more
else.
than blaming these communities, you'll be falling into that trap. But I'm only correcting this disinformation that arms started in this place and that. But the first picture, anybody can objectively say, at the beginning of this crisis, when people were burning down houses, you see these armed men in Torbung areas. And now that video you can play is available. And I have been saying that whether that was started by this community or that, ultimately it is the state's failure to rein in this violence. They didn't do it, and they don't do it still.
So there was this much talked about joint meeting called by the MHA between the Kuki MLAs and the Methi MLAs on October 15th, basically to find an amicable solution to the crisis. In fact, that meeting ended up exposing the divide between the two communities than anything else, because the Kuki MLAs said that at this juncture they don't want to sit alongside their the Methi MLAs. What do you make of it? Because even the political representatives have failed to break ice. The Kuki MLAs have been boycotting the assembly session in the state for a long time now. So, I mean, and there have been demand for the removal of Chief Minister Biren Singh. So, how do you see
See, I think first of
this?
all, let me correct this one. It is not an MHA arranging a meeting for cookies and the Maites and so on. This is only their ruling coalition.
Hmm,
If it is a peace move, then it has to be involved. It has to involve the other parties as well. My party was not invited.
Congress?
Yeah, so obviously it was only they are trying to a meeting being arranged by the MHA. That's also very unfortunate. It shows that the political executive, these are people's representative. How can you call a bureaucrat asking them to come and talk? To my sense, it is insulting. I mean, it is reducing the elected members to a certain status. I know it is the political executive. This party bosses should call it, not in MHA. If they are doing in their party coalition, call them in BJP headquarters and talk it out. That should be the first step. I think so. The misinformation is that that was as if it is a dialogue between initiated between the cookies and that too by MHA as it is being said. I think I have been insisting again, going back to your interview. In fact, I've given you two interviews at the beginning of the crisis. I've said that the prime ministers they should call all his MLAs. Let's see if they don't come, then throw them out from the party. If that is the political executive responsibility. They are shrugging off their responsibility by transferring it to bureaucrats, and bureaucrats calling elected members to talk, even for their government, ministers and others. As is absolutely, to my sense, it affronts my sensibility. The dignity of the elected members has not been respected. But it is not a cookie meeting. This is to play up this divide again. If the party calls, I'm not calling you as Kuki or Naga or a Maitai, I'm calling you as party, my member. Why you can't sit together? Even if that's the way, if the Hindu and Muslim MPs cannot sit together, will any party accept? Will BJP accept that, Brahmin and Dalit MPs and MLAs cannot sit together? That's absolutely nonsense. So if the party should be calling them together. But this narrative of cookie Meitei, I've been saying that this is how the Europeans have done to the African societies. Hutus and Tutsis, they're external to your affairs and essentializing this conflict. I think that must be avoided. I think this lack of sensibility is still being displayed in that kind of a move that I've seen.
So, do you think that the central intervention, whatever has happened so far, is helping in any way? And I mean, if you were to give 5 action points to the central government, to the Modi government, to restore normalcy in Manipur, what will they be?
Mostly, we are in the deja vu. You have asked this question before as well, in that interview. What is the way forward? I said, first, at the level of their political party, their government of Manipur is not speaking in one language. Two cabinet ministers are supporting UT demand and a separate administration. So, what is the cabinet position on that? What is the BJP government's position on that? If their own cabinet ministers is supporting separate administration and UT, two of these cookie ministers, is Biren Singh's cabinet minister. So what is the government of Manipur under Biren Singh's position? His two cabinet ministers are demanding separate administration and UT, and the other cabinet ministers are not supporting it. This is their government affairs. That integration, that dialogue must begin within themselves. That's why I said
So, has he lost control over his
no, I'm
own
saying
MLA?
that he has lost control is quite obvious of his own cabinet ministers. And I think this is why the prime minister, the question is, they are political masters here in Delhi, BJP bosses and the prime ministers. Have they lost control of these cabinet ministers? I don't think so, because they are giving command, and these people are following. So one of the command they should have given to them is that you come along here. You sit down here and talk it out and take a position. What is the position of the government of Manipur and BJP party's government position? That must be the first move to resolve, because they are in the government. Once they finish this dialogue, second most important thing is that I have said this. State is a state precisely because it claims the monopoly of the legitimate use of physical force. There are legitimate institutions like armed forces, police forces, all of them must exercise their legitimate power. Their power cannot be snatched by civil armed groups or
On
any
both
other
sides.
anywhere.
On both sides.
Obviously, the state has to assert itself and contain the violence. This is the two conditions. Until and unless you do this drama of calling Cookie and others by MHA, I've already told you, which is insulting, this drama will not work. These two things must be satisfied. This is the necessary condition to move forward. Make the government of Manipur speak in one language. Prime Minister should ensure that, because don't say that Prime Minister has lost control over the government of Manipur, because you have a power to dismiss the government of the state as well. And besides, you have been giving command which they have been following. So one of your crucial commands should be, come here in Delhi, sit down in front of me. I am the Prime Minister of this country. I cannot pretend to be concerned only about the death and destruction in Ukraine and not bothered about what happened in his own home country in one of his states. This is the prime minister. It's going to be 2 years, right? 1.5 years.
1.5 years.
Now, even it's such a serious crisis, constitutional collapse, machineries are not working, the CM can't go to hill areas. In such a situation, you don't even give audience to. Our party have, tried to meet the prime ministers for appointment. I have tried personally to meet the president. I didn't get it. So these satraps in Manipur, whatever Delhi says, are following. So once since they followed it, ask them to come here, talk it out.
But what is the sense that you are getting? Why is that happening?
So that is what this country must ask. Don't focus on Kuki Maite, Kuki Maite. That's how the Europeans have done on Hutus and Tutsis or Muslims and Hindus in South Asia. That's the European way of looking at it. That colonial mindset must be thrown out. We must be asking a legitimate question. It is not so much about cookies and Maites. It is about how the Indian state is and should be. I think that is what we must be concentrating here. We are asking the wrong questions on cookies and maites. I'm asking how you are allowing Indian state to be like a banana republic there. Why is that your own cabinet ministers are not talking in one language? Two cabinet cookie ministers demanding separate administration and still holding the portfolio of the cabinet ministers, and other ministers saying that I'll save Manipur, integration will not be disturbed. This hypocrisy, this blatant, lies and this drama should end. And the prime minister is involved in that since because he allows them to do that, and he is not even bothered to talk. And why? This is beyond party politics. This is about constitutionalism. This is about being a state, a legitimate state. Why should we be talking about, I think far more than talking about cookies and maites, we should be all focusing on how is that this government is behaving like this. Why is it the prime minister is not even concerned about this? And he said it 3 times. Peace says returning, peace says returning, peace says. He is saying that since August. Is this the peace that we are seeing, the latest one? Hostage taking, which you don't see. I have seen people being killed from both sides. But hostage taking, this is the second time I am witnessing. It is a terrorist act, nothing else.
So the Kuki groups have also been adamant about a separate administration for them in Manipur. In fact, Mizoram CM Lalduoma in September, when he was in US, he called for unity of Zo, Chin, Kuki and Mizo communities uh, uh, across India, Bangladesh and Myanmar on ethnic and religious lines. In fact, I mean, his statement stirred a controversy back then. So, how do you see it? I mean, this demand for a separate administration, then Mr. Lalduhoma's, I mean,
I think Laldoma, the Honorable Chief Minister from Mizoram, also said something I've heard on video. He said we can't fight three enemies or something like that.
Yeah.
We can't fight India, we can't fight China, we can't fight, we can't fight Bangladesh, we can't fight Myanmar and something. Why a CM of a state should fight with India? You understand what I'm saying? Now, you are talking about a Kukichin nation. I have said this many times. This problem in Manipur implicates a larger international ethno-nationalist mobilization involving this Kuki, within quote Kukichin group, spanning from Bangladesh through India and Myanmar. Just Mizoram's neighbor is the Chin state of Myanmar. And he's talking about consolidating their nationhood. And I have said this. I think you can check it. I think I've spoken in a couple of times, even on recently in Manorama's conclave in Kerala. I have said this, that, what they, this is a halfway home they are dreaming. Separate administration and UT is like a halfway home. Before you achieve their Jalingam, you can have a halfway home in each of these countries. So separate administration and duty is positioned within that narrative, and it's very clear when Mr. Laluma said that one. But you must also remember one of their leading intellectuals from Hyderabad University said in an interview that's a kind of a threat that Indian state cannot afford to annoy this Kukichin, spanning from Bangladesh to Myanmar, and it is Freudian sleep. That's the agenda. And in Manipur's crisis is a reflection of that. Certain elements in the state are involved in that one. And the UT demand or separate administration is a halfway home before you achieve that You see that that is quite obvious as I see it, and it's already implicated. But there are, I mean, remember that there are cookies who love Manipur. I have friends, I have students before. And many of these masses have been sort of a silence. And possibly many of these MLAs, they must realize that they should have the courage to stand up if they love Indian state and the state of Manipur. If anybody is going to be against Manipur, I think majority of the people will fight out till the end. If you think that Manipur can be taken for granted and destroyed, I think there will be lakhs and lakhs of people who will not bother, even will not even blink to die for their state.
Let's hope, sir, that peace and normalcy comes back to Manipur at the earliest.
Yeah, that's I've been what I've been praying, but the problem is that I don't see any move from the Indian state government of India, any sincerity on in that front. So our wishing cannot be simply a wish. We have to keep, expressing our opinions. I did it as a public intellectuals.
And in fact, in your maiden speech in Parliament in June, you spoke about the deafening silence
Yeah,
from the center.
that's that. See, I entered politics precisely because this platform is required. Because who is speaking outside,
Mhm.
they don't care to listen. Now I have to speak in the on the floor of the house, and as a member of parliament, I have that responsibility. That's why I think all sensible people in this country must ask the right kind of question for for us to have a what should I say, tangible dream of returning to normalcy. If we don't point out what is the basic problem, then we will not be having that normalcy. But we should be working rather than dreaming, and like sharing opinions like this with people to change their viewpoints and opinions so that we see things in the right perspective. I think only then we can hope for normalcy. And we will be doing it. You people also work, I also work. A lot of us have to work together to ensure that people of Manipur deserve peace and development. And this is not the way that we should be.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for joining us,
Thank you. It's
Professor
my
Akoijam.
pleasure. It's my pleasure.